policy that is being introduced, it is important that the objectives behind it are shared and the general public is made aware of the intent of that policy. And from my own side of view, I think this is one policy that will help everyone holistically, both government, the students in question, institutions, that is the universities, and even the parents at large. Because over time we have seen if transpire or generate as a result of immaturity of students who migrate to the higher institutions. And except we want to deceive ourselves, maturity is something that has to do with not just intellect, but that has to also do with the psychological balance, the emotional balance, sorry, of the child. A lot of our students who go into the universities at a younger age, 16 and below, don't have that matured approach to issues. And of course, that in one way or the other also affects the emotional balance of those children. So I feel that it's a welcome idea because it has direct inclination on the life of the students in question. And it will allow for better maturity, better psychological balance, and as a result, we would have these children live up to expectations on a better note, even academically. No matter how proficient a child is, no matter how sound that child is, a child that is getting to university 14, 15, or 15, 16, if that child gets into university, if that child is ending in the university with a first class, which can be 4.5, for example, you can be sure that if that child gets into university 18 and runs that program between 18 and the next 4 years, that child may actually end with a 4.8 or a 4.9. So no matter what we're saying, there will be some improvement both in academics and most importantly in the emotional and psychological stability of those children.
Let's also take your thoughts, really. Do you also agree to the federal government, or you disagree?
Well, if not for what you call policy somersault, going forward and backwards, when you trace the whole thing backwards, this debate will not be necessary, because in our time, before you can get to primary one, you must be 6 years old. And your hand must touch, this hand must touch your right here or your left here. And that will presuppose that you are at least matured enough to start and you can cope. Now, if you also go backwards, primary school was 8 years. Secondary school was also 8 years, because you get to class 6, okay, you get to class 6, then it was split to class 5. And also the brilliant ones must go to HSC, higher school certificate. It is only those that cannot cope with higher school certificate that are released to the world to go and be clerks in ministries. So these things have been taken care of from the beginning. But the coming of the private schools that become commercial in nature has now necessitated what we call early finish, especially the principle of comparing notes. My wife runs a nursery primary, and you can see parents are in a hurry. They want their children to finish very early. And to what extent, I don't know. And if you don't give their children double promotion, they go to some other schools that are ready to give double promotion. And at the end of the day, these pupils become useless to themselves. It's sad that government is now waking up. It's not how early, but how well. Now, when we went to the university, of course, the minimum age at that time was even 19, 20 to get into the university. And then you'll be finishing around 23, 24. And So you don't want to get involved in unnecessary rascality because you already have a focus. But if you go too early, like we are experiencing, I've been a vice chancellor of a university. I'm still in the university system. You can see they look like agric. They don't know their left from right. And they don't even seem to understand that they are into serious studies. They think they are doing their parents a favor. And we've had to involve a lot of counseling for them to understand why they are in the university. And it's because of this immaturity. 15, 16, 17, a few of them are mature because they are 19 and, you know. But then the majority are within the 15 and 17 bracket. So I see that at least government is waking up now.
Mr. Jiboku, let me come to you. There's this, I'm looking at this from so many things I've heard. Now, number one, the minister says this is not a new law. As a matter of fact, his analysis is that it's part of the 6334 system. In the 6334 policy, you are not supposed to enter the primary one until you are 6 years, and plus another 6 years in secondary school, making it 12 years. Now, that means that by the time you are exiting secondary school, you are 18. But some people are saying that that policy is also violating the rights of these children, because you are depriving them of their right to tertiary education by limiting the age requirements. Do you agree with this school of thought?
I don't agree to that opinion. I don't agree to it at all, because what is important is what is important is for government to have a policy that can stand the test of time, the initiatives and ideas that can be used to complement whatever policies that are being placed on board. Going by the 633 system of education, 633-4 system of education, I think we need to correct, because I tried to analyze that 6334, and going by that analysis, 6 years in primary. In fact, what they have changed it to is 934, if I'm right. They say 9 years of basic education. That is 6 years in primary and 3 years in junior secondary school. Then you now do another 3 years in senior secondary school, then 4 years for university. If a child gets into primary school at age 6, that means that that child will use 6 years in primary school. Expectedly, it means that any child getting into the secondary school must get into secondary school at age 12. Now, if you get into secondary school at age 12, you are using another, another 6 years.
In the secondary school?
Yes, in the secondary school. So 6 years in secondary school plus 12 gives you 18. But what we have seen more often is that secondary schools take children at age 10. In fact, a lot of secondary institutions are not even aware of this rigid policy that you must be 12 before you can actually get into secondary school. A lot of secondary schools pick 10, and they will say, look, if you are less than 10, if you are 9, if you are 8, that's what most people look at. Now, what for me is important again is some children graduate at 16. What is in place for that gap year? There is no right that is being distorted if there is a plan that every child, every parent sees as a benefit in the interest of that child. What is important for the gap year? If a child leaves secondary school at 16, what do you want that child to do between 16, 17 plus or 16, 18? And that is what I think is key and is important. And that is one thing that government needs to look at in the process of trying to bring this policy on board. Prof has said it rightly. When in their own time, and if I'm right, there was HSC, high school certificate. If you finish secondary school, you can go and do HSC. Recently, I don't know if A-levels was in Prof's time.
A-level HSC. Both.
You know, so
both.
You can also go and do A-levels. A-levels you do run for another 1 year or thereabouts, 1 year plus. By the time you are finishing, you are 17 plus before you, by the time you are seeking admission, and by 18 you are fine. So what government needs to do is to also let us incorporate an idea for that gap year. And in all honesty, two things can be looked into. One, entrepreneurship, vocational skills is one that is everybody is hammering on now, because we have seen that, yes, the society, the nation is throwing away from white-collar jobs. So everybody needs to think about what they can do with their hands. What stops us from saying that you finish at 16, go to a vocational institute or a vocational center, go and learn something for the next 1 year, 1.5 years, thereabouts. Let government develop vocational institutes all over the states, different states in the nation. That's an idea. What is the problem of Nigeria? One of the challenges we have in the nation today is good governance, which is leadership. What stops us from saying that when these children also leave, go to leadership academies? Let's have leadership institutes. And let them go there, go and do 1.5 years, and you begin to develop young leaders. Children at 17, 18, they already have what it takes to even lead. They know what it encompasses. They know the importance of being good leaders, things they should do as leaders, things they should not do. These are two options that I think would be good for us as a nation. In other parts of the world, Russia, I can't remember this country now, where they will tell you you must go for a military program.
Yes.
They have done that based on the peculiarity of their region, because, of course, we know that the region is quite volatile when it comes to, you know, wars and all these things. So they will tell you, once you leave secondary school, you must go to military academy, a military school, before you go to the university. It is compulsory. So let us use the uniqueness, the challenges in our own nation, Nigeria, to fix a program for that 2 years. And I think with that, no child will say that my right is being distorted or anyone is working against his or her rights.
All right, Prof. With the way things are structured, especially parenting is structured nowadays, discover that because the father, the mother, both working, they would rather put a 2-year-old, probably less, in somewhere just to make them crèche and all of that. It's almost impossible to see someone finish secondary school at 18. But the way things are, it probably will be less. So my question to you is, if we are going to maintain 18 years, starting from next year, to enter the university or the tertiary institutions, what should we do with the entry level at the primary and secondary?
That's where the problem is. We should go backwards, because now there used to be a song, the mother that carried me in the womb for 9 months and bagged me for 3 years, which means that before 3 years, you should still be under the care of your parents. And that's why we have stifle growth in children, because many of them will not even take breast milk, because even their parents are not even ready give breast milk, either because some will say they don't want their breast to drag. And you continue to look at whether these parents are really serious. Now, even if you want to, if there is going to be nursery, you can't get into nursery before 3. Maybe between 4 and 5, nursery 1, nursery 2, and then you now go to primary 1 at age 6. Now, so when you go back and enforce that law at that level, then the secondary school will not have a problem, because that's where you graduate them, and then you push them to the, to the secondary schools. Now, he said something that I will key into. Maybe we should go back to higher school certificate. You see, because higher school certificate is a program that matures you because of the seriousness of the exams and toughness. And then only a few people make it at the first attempt. You come back, it is when maybe 2-3 years you do HSC and you are not able to make it. Then you now go for prelim. By the time you get to university, you are already a mature person, and you are serious with, with your studies.
But not everyone will be able to afford that. I mean, because that also has its own economic implications.
Afford HSC. I say afford HSC.
Yes.
If you can't afford HSC, then you are not a university product. Then you can go and do some other things. Because let me tell you,
I'm not talking about the intellectual ability. I'm talking about the financial commitment. Involved. So some people pay through their nose. They squeeze water out of stone to send their children to university. So if you are not saying that such persons should first and foremost send their children to go do HSC, that will be more money, more commitment, and that could be frustrating.
Are we not talking about the total charge? It takes a lot of money to train the total child. It's not a question of money. Look, sometimes I'm surprised at parents. Some are tomato sellers, and they will still gather money and bring their children to private universities.
Yes.
Not even secondary school. Private university. Then when people say there's no money, I just begin to wonder, where did these people get money? Now, investment on children is very key, and I think parents are saying, I didn't get that opportunity. My child must not be denied that opportunity of achieving greatness. So it's not a question of whether he can afford or not afford, but that it is a developmental process. If you don't want to look at that, then you look at skill acquisition. Because whether you like it or not, no government can employ everybody. In US, for example, the ability to use your hand will fetch you more money than a white-collar job. In fact, a secondary school teacher in US earns more than a professor. Sometimes I'm surprised, but that's it. A rural secondary school teacher earns better than an urban secondary school teacher. It is because they have seen that their rural areas must be developed. And therefore, they must pay attention to the rural areas. And so, and when you even talk about their rural areas is as good as our urban centers there, because they have electricity, they have everything. Is that it's not as crowded. So now we must be serious. Government must be serious at implementing. Well, of course, now there are loans. Of course, don't forget that there are student loans to supplement whatever parents can afford. And don't forget that even in that time there were loans. There were loans, yes, bursaries, loans, and whatever. And in the US, Obama paid through his nose in university through loans, and he only finished paying his loan at the time he was becoming president. So why is anybody scared of loans if it means
Well, so some persons have said those policies can work in those places because most times when you finish school, you get the job that would help you pay almost immediately. But here, I mean, the chances that you're going to get a job after finishing university, are even slim. And so getting a loan through stringent procedure, first and foremost, and then after, getting the loans, going to the school, getting the job that will help you pay the loan is another thing.
But what of skill acquisition? That's what he said.
Yes, I quite agree. I mean, those are different suggestions too.
The university now, especially private universities, we have looked at the future of our students. We've seen that there are jobs nowhere. And then before you graduate, you must have 2 skills, master 2 skills, and many of them are already practicing those skills and they are making money from it.
Now let us look at some of the reasons why parents will actually want their children to quickly, get through, and over school. One of them is the incessant strikes that we have been having in the country over time. I mean, if you say 18 years old should be the minimum. Now, a child that gets into a university or higher institution at the age of probably 18, 19, 20, and then in the course of the study, he encounters or experiences like 3 or 4, or let's just say, okay, minimum of 2 strikes that probably lasted for 6 months plus. That's like 1-2 years of his life, being wasted. And then don't also forget that after the academic pursuit, he gets into a workforce. And then even in the workforce, there is what you also call career progression. Some persons, by the time they are getting into work very, very late, it affects their career progression. I mean, so don't you think those other issues too have to be addressed? Issues of strike in our tertiary institutions.
Well, that's why many parents prefer
private universities.
There will be no strike. But then, when you look at public universities and look at the incessant strike, there's a way in which you can curb that one too. If you strictly implement the policy of no work, no pay, then it will not be business as usual. Because once you go on strike, you don't get paid.
What are the conditions that lead to this strike?
Now, there are no conditions that are perfect. And no nation can run beyond its economic affordability. The problem with government is that it got in contact with, took too many things that you cannot cater for. Government wants to is this over centralization? You want to get into this, you want to get into this, you want to get into this. There were missionary secondary schools that were doing very well than public schools. Yet government came in and took all of them, and therefore the churches don't have useful things to do with money. And therefore their pastors now can get 5 cars, 6 cars, 8 cars, and get indulged into too many frivolities. When missionaries were, or when missions were handling schools, schools were very, very good. So government should look at that and hand over, because the church has a lot of money. That's where money is. Because everybody is into the race for heaven, so so that's where money is. Government should capitalize on that.
And then the issue of affordability still comes in. How many persons will be able to afford these missionary schools? Don't forget that those days when these things were very cheap and accessible for even the children of the common man, these missionaries were getting funding from overseas. But now they have to get their money from within. And the average parent that is sending his or her child, to that school would actually be paying for it.
You see, before you come in, what I think the government should do and is trying to do is that no child should be denied up to secondary education. University is not for everybody. And that's the mistake. University is not for everybody. So once people know that, then you know that you have to get skills, necessary skills to survive. And look at it. In Nigeria of today, the bricklayer, the carpenter, the mechanic, they have more money than us. That depend on salaries. So, what are you talking about?
Now,
we need a reorientation.
Both of you have talked about the need for preparedness and maturity, really, of every child before getting to higher institutions. I mean, because these higher institutions are for serious business, really. You know, but does it mean that it is at that age of 18 that one can become mature? Is maturity and preparedness for tertiary institution attached to age or a thing of the mind, which we can even begin to help children? I mean, we can begin to inculcate in children right from, you know, while they are in secondary schools and even primary schools.
Well, for me, age has a direct correlation with maturity. If you go to the United Kingdom, the UK will tell you that a child is regarded as a matured student only when you're 21. The UK government does not see, and who colonized us for heaven's sake? Who told us on this path? It was the British. So they don't see an 18-year-old child as being matured yet. They say a child or a student is regarded as a matured one when you're 21. Why are they saying that? It's because the age has some measure of correlation. Maybe not total correlation, but it has some measure of correlation with maturity. Now, let's look at it. Social vices. Even in secondary schools now, don't let's even go to our institution. Even in secondary schools, are you aware that there are a number of social vices that run in secondary institutions?
It's a reflection of the society.
Well, it's a reflection of the society, and that's why we're saying that the society is the way it is. But maturity gives you an opportunity to filter between the wrong and the bad, and gives you an opportunity to take decisions of your own. When somebody is, it does not mean that yes, and we can't hold this rigidly, but we're just trying to look at a situation of between 10 people. What will it look like if you have somebody who is matured and somebody who is not matured? It does not mean that, like they were saying, that a student graduated with a first class, being 19-year-old from one of the private universities. Yeah. And I was saying it that if you bring 100 students together in that same condition that student studied, with that same curriculum, bring 100 students, maybe it will be 4 or 5 of them that will be able to also achieve that same feat that child achieved. If you bring 100 together, the same condition, the same factors, maybe 3, 5. So you cannot say because one 19-year-old graduated from a private university and made first class, then you will say that it's a right justification to say, then what has happened in that scenario is the right one. No. So, as far as we are concerned, maturity is one thing that would help these children, and it helps everybody in every facet of life. Every facet of life. Prof, the experience that Prof has, I'm sure none of us here can say, yes, we want to compete. That experience is by virtue of what? It's by virtue of age. is by virtue of age. What Prof have seen, we have not seen at all.
Yeah,
so age gives an opportunity for us to actually have minds of our own, take decisions that is independent and not decisions that is influenced. Like we see generally now, there's a lot of peer influence in the life of our youths today. A lot of them cannot say no to courtism. Why? Because they see the other person doing that part of courtism. A lot of them cannot say no to hard drugs because they see somebody puffing and they too, they want to do it. They are not matured. They don't have minds of their own. And that is one issue. So I feel that it is important that we allow that age bracket for proper maturity of the children. Right.
All right, Mr. Jiboku, I would like to ask you some few questions, 2 in 1 actually. Now, before, what brought about this, according to Professor Ishaq Oloyede, is that some private universities were seen where 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds were being admitted as students. Now, does that mean that private university is not a blessing, or private institutions are not a blessing? Because you don't find these kind of things more in the public than, it's more in the private than the public. That's number 1. Number 2 is that for those children that are already admitted, what can we do? They are admitted, they are 10, they are 14, they are 15, they are already in the university. What should we do now?
Well, let me start from the rear. What should be done? This policy is not a policy that can take effect immediately. In my own opinion, this policy needs to be staggered. You can't postulate this policy and be rigid at it right from this point, because you even need to look at those that are entering JS1 now. A new session is starting in September. Those that are entering JS1 now, what do we expect? Because you still have some of them that are, what do you call it, that are 9, 10, entering secondary school now. So I feel government, and that is the reason why it is important that government brings in all stakeholders. I'm aware this pronouncement was made by the Minister of Education, but how much consultation was done? I think that is key. We need to bring in secondary school administrators or the secondary school body, NAPS. You need to bring in even public school body. You need to bring in university vice chancellors. It is an holistic thing. So we need to weigh everything from all ends before we say that that policy should take effect from next year. We can't just say it should take effect from next year without looking at what the effect will be, especially on those ones that are, still behind. Now, going to the private universities or private institutions, we don't need to mince words, and we don't need to deceive ourselves. A lot of private institutions are after money, and that is one of the issues, and it's one of the problems. We need to be able to filter between money and the future of these children. And that is the reason why the regulation is one that must cut across board. We see UNILAG trying to enforce 16-year-old entry. We see OBAYEMI trying to enforce 16-year-old entry. What happens to the other federal universities? Why should the private universities do a different path? Why?
Let me comment there. Now, it's not as general as you just said that private universities are after money.
Maybe not generally, Prof.
No.
Not generally, but some specific.
Don't also forget that the university system is regulated, whether private or public, by Nigeria Universities Commission. And all programs must be accredited. And before accreditation, visits will be made, and there are basic minimum in terms of teaching staff, in terms of equipment. In fact, private universities have more equipment in our laboratories than public universities. Modern equipment. If you go to our studio, Department of Mass Communication, we train our students just ready for you to absorb them because you have gone down all the practical training. Now, what happens with private universities is that they give us more job than we should be doing because we have children who are not ripe on our hands. Public universities don't care whether you pass or fail. A whole class can fail in a public university, but in a private university, the lecturer will be crucified. So, what does that mean? It means that you now have to put in extra effort in terms of arranging free extra classes to ensure that your students measure up to expectation. You have to, there are counseling at various levels. The hostel level, the departmental level, the college level, the university level. They don't happen in public universities because they are mature. Why are they mature? Because they have insisted they wanted to go to public university because of fees. And so they can do JAM 5 times before they meet up the cutoff. But since the cutoff their cutoff now for this year is 140. But private universities also differ because everybody sets up his own cutoff apart from the universal cutoff. And so what that entails is that even when you are disadvantaged in terms of coming to the university with 140 marks, because one thing, my experience, I've seen that it's not JAM, really it's not a student does well in JAM does not mean that student is brilliant. It may be one aspect of measurement. We've discovered that people that didn't score high are more brilliant than people who score high in JAM because of these special centers. So it's not really a true reflection. But when you now screen...
But for JAM or for WAEC?
No, at all levels. Both at WAEC...
Because I'm aware that JAM
is CBT.
The CBT centers...
Yes, whether you... yes, there are still special centers, whether you like it or not. Special centers that influence you. Parents know these special centers as they know where they put.
But all these,
that may be pronounced with WAEC.
But that is not even
for JAM.
That's not even the issue.
But all these really are not even reasons enough why private universities should admit underage.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about 10 years old. I mean, it's absurd.
And that's
For JAM,
for Professor Ishakudo to have said that,
he must have seen one or two
cases of a 10. For example, I know of parents that will say, okay, my children will go to secondary school from primary 4. And at primary 4, the child is just 9 years old. Now, which means that how old will he live? Some people will not even allow them with SS3 before they go into the tertiary institution. Why? Because they had done GC at SS2 and they had passed.
These things, they are so clear. And you see, there are a lot of gaps that need to be bridged. How many primary schools run up to basic 6? Some even just do basic 5. Not all primary schools.
Especially private primary
schools. So how many of them have, where the system of education is saying 6 in primary school, but you have a number of them that are 5. Then you have a lot of private schools. Even as we're emphasizing 10 years of age, you see a lot of people that don't care, 8, they take them. So this thing has to be regulated from the beginning, from the source. In fact, the beginning of the regulation starts with National Population Commission. That's where we need to start from, NPC. Because they are the ones that issue these certificates of birth that we use to determine age. In our own institution, we will tell you that before we admit you to affirm that you are 10, you must present the birth certificate of your child. is one of the prerequisites to affirm that you are 10. But we know what operates in Nigeria. You see somebody who is carrying a birth certificate that totally contradicts what the actual age of that person is. So, if we must get this right, we need to take it right from the source. From NPC, from private primary schools, government primary schools, private secondary schools, government secondary schools, government tertiary institutions, private tertiary institutions, and it has to be realistic.
Look at this scenario. Our time is almost over. Look at this scenario. When you apply for a job after graduation, probably a banking job or whatever private sector job, they will say, they will give you the criteria for qualification and will say age limit 24. Now, if for example, if you have to wait to 18 years for entering the university and strike and everything, you have to graduate beyond 24 years. That means that there are some jobs that your age
you're not able to get
to apply for.
Once the policy is harnessed, those things will change.
Yes.
You just need to harness the policy. Once the policy is harnessed, everybody knows the limit. You know that somebody cannot graduate before 21. And so you also have to up.
And that's why we say that all stakeholders must be brought into this discussion. It's not something that the Ministry of Education can just alone. You know, all stakeholders must be brought into this discussion.
Now, as we close, do you think that some exceptionally brilliant students who are mature and emotionally intelligent and ripe for university education, even at the age of 16, 17, do you think some of these people can be given, waiver, really?
No, personally, I don't feel so. I feel, and you see, like I did say when I started talking, what is important is let us identify what should happen to that gap here. It's very important. When we identify, why are you saying that everybody, they should go for NYSC program? Even though they give exemption, but generally everybody will do NYSC. Now, what happens in that gap here should be something that is legislated. And we say, you finish secondary school, go to a leadership academy, go to a vocational institute, be certified, whether you're a private university or you're a government institution, that certificate is a prerequisite for your admission. That way, you are sure that anybody getting into the university has taken a leadership course or has taken a vocational course, and it is uniform. By the time you start considering this person is brilliant, he's 16, then dichotomy will set in. And you will see that people will now start avoiding some of these things that should be statutory. So I don't feel anybody should be.
Let me just give you one little example. When we were in secondary school, some mature people went through modern school and joined us in class 2. In fact, because they were mature, the way they assimilated, in fact, one or two of them had to be given double promotion because it was very, very matured. So, but while we were still playing away football and all the rest of them, they knew the business they were into. So you see, I will sympathize with people who will mature before their age. There are people like that. Because yes, there are some children that are really very, very wise. God-given gift.
Yes.
But then that also could be diverted into something
else.
Also use
very
that go for computer training and whatever it can begin to build, do something, do skill acquisition, and then get useful before. So it's adequately prepared for university education.
All right, our time is up. We have to go. I want to say a big thank you to Professor OLUFEMI ONABANJO for coming to Newdon and for doing justice to this topic. And also a big thank you to Mr. OBAYEMI, JIBOKU. Thank you so much for helping us dissect this topic. And we have to go now. Thank you so much for joining us since Newdon started today. I'm sure you've been informed, you've been educated, and maybe a little bit entertained in these few minutes together. We have to go now. Dominic.
Yes, I'm Dominic Agbe. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.